This particular budget, in my mind, has two parts to it, an agency spending and the dividend amount. So I'd like to start out with the agency spending. The Dunleavy administration has done more to move the needle and help to right-size government than any other governor in the last decade and a half. The governor's budget proposal definitely provided the catalyst to make some of the necessary reductions in the state operating budget. Within this effort, here are a few key points. Legislators have spent much of this session working with the governor's commissioners through the subcommittee process to find realistic and reasonable cuts to create the FY 2020 budget. The legislature also created a budget that would not result, hopefully, in additional costs being added midway through a supplemental, because that creates cash flow problems next year. So there was a lot of discussion and hours of subcommittee to make sure we have realistic and reasonable cuts, and I believe that that's reflected in this budget. After the Senate takes this budget before us and then considers the expected revenues this year, I am happy to say that our state has about a $700 million surplus. I'm very, very happy to say that. This is, of course, before paying a dividend. If we pay a dividend of about $1,200 per person, that would be the default dividend, and we would have a zero balance budget. We would not have to draw on our savings accounts, whether it be the statutory budget reserve, the constitutional budget reserve, or the permanent fund. And lastly, with this budget, the Senate was also mindful of the limits of how much local governments can absorb in funding through government local taxes. So we were mindful of that. So, Madam President, I am very proud of this budget. Every senator in this room had input, attended multiple subcommittee meetings, and put a lot of thought and effort into this document. I watched senators evaluate the various budget components. In addition to thinking about the cost of a particular program, senators were also thinking of the value as well. And some high-cost programs we decided to keep because Alaskans consider them very valuable. However, I come to the dividend. This budget includes a $3,000 dividend, and to me, this creates too much of a fiscal burden on our savings accounts and negatively impacts the overall fiscal health of our state. A full statutory dividend creates a $1.2 billion deficit, and as a true fiscal conservative, I cannot support that. For people in Alaska who want a rational and reasonable budget, you have a voice through me. For those Alaskans watching today who don't want the legislature to take a money grab of our permanent fund outside our structured draw or drain our state cash reserves, I am your advocate. Over the last several months, I have continued to advocate for a balanced budget approach as we create the operating budget, as well as consider the amount of the dividend. As I have stated earlier, the state does have enough money to pay for a certain level of government and a certain level for a dividend, but it does not have enough money to pay for both at the highest level desired. I worry that when our state becomes an ATM for the people, our state services will be at risk. Our savings for emergencies are at risk. Our credit rating is at risk. And when the hardworking people of Alaska are asked to pay an income tax, only to see their hard-earned cash deposited into the checking account of their neighbor, I am not sure how long our state as we know it will last. So, Madam President, I temporarily support this budget, despite this $3,000 dividend. Because this budget does not end with today's vote. It moves it to the conference committee, where both the legislative bodies will negotiate directly. This dividend is subject to change. It will be very important to examine the fiscal impacts of this entire budget, including all the amendments that we did today, and how it interplays with the dividend and our savings accounts and our structured draw on the permanent fund. And we will do that in the conference committee. So with this, I will vote yes to advance the budget through the legislative process. Thank you.